Gather round, everyone. Tonight, we're not just looking at history, we're stepping into it, where we peel back the layers of the past, not to find glory, but to find the grime. We're about to journey to a time a little darker, a little grittier, and a lot smellier. This is an era defined by plagues, punishments, and pottage. We're diving deep into what life was really like during the Middle Ages. So forget everything you've seen in movies. The shining armor, the noble quests, the picturesque castles, that's all a carefully crafted fantasy. The reality? You probably wouldn't last a single day. So before we get comfortable in our modern world, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of brutal honesty. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease in to tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up. The year is 1325. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, so are the fleas. Your bed is a half-rotten straw mattress stuffed with bugs and hay that smells like a barn floor, because it was a barn floor 3 months ago. There's no memory foam, no pillows, and definitely no Egyptian cotton sheets. Just a wool blanket that hasn't been washed since last winter and now weighs roughly as much as a small cow from the accumulated grime. You blink awake as the church bell clangs in the distance. It's the medieval version of an alarm clock, only louder and somehow even less merciful. Your home is a wooden hut with one room, no windows, and a charming open concept floor plan where your family, livestock, and domestic insects all share the same space. The smell? Oh, it's a fragrant symphony. A subtle blend of stale beer, human sweat, goat, and something you pray isn't mold, but know in your soul probably is. Scented candles haven't been invented, and even if they were, they'd just melt on your dirt floor. You try to stretch, but immediately regret it because the air is freezing and your joints ache. You're 22 years old, which in medieval terms is roughly middle-aged. Your spine creaks like an old wooden door, and your knees sound like a bag of rocks being shaken by a confused peasant. Getting out of bed is a gamble. The floor is either wet from last night's rain, which leaks through the thatched roof, or crusty from something your neighbor's chicken did. Either way, your bare feet are now part of the ecosystem. Oh, and privacy? What's that? Your entire family, and maybe a random cousin who just never left, are waking up beside you. There's no bedroom, no curtains, no me time, just communal everything. Welcome to morning in medieval Europe, where you're never truly alone because parasites, rodents, and 8 other people are always with you. And this is just how your day starts. It only gets worse from here. So, you've managed to crawl out of your medieval haystack of horrors. Congrats! Now nature calls. And it's not calling politely, it's screaming. Here's the part where you start missing the modern bathroom. There's no toilet, no seat, no toilet paper, no flush, not even a mildly resentful plunger in the corner. In the 14th century, relieving yourself is an adventure, a social experiment, and often a small public event. If you're a peasant, your bathroom is likely a wooden bucket behind the house, which is already full because Uncle Wolfstan had a rough night after eating bad turnips. The smell is biblical. You hold your breath, do your business, and then, here's the kicker, toss it into the street. Yes, the street. You're supposed to shout something like "Gardilou" before dumping it out the window. That's Old French for watch out below, although frankly, no one ever moves fast enough. Streets in medieval towns are open sewers, a charming river of human waste, animal droppings, and mystery liquids you'd rather not examine. If you're lucky enough to live in a town with public latrines, congratulations. You get to sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers in an outhouse where privacy is a myth and ventilation is a cruel joke. You might make small talk, but try not to breathe too deeply. Toilet paper? Never heard of it. Most people wipe with straw, leaves, rags, moss, or if they're feeling especially indulgent, a scrap of wool. Sometimes nothing at all, which might explain why handshakes weren't popular yet. And if you're in a castle, surely it's better, right? Well, sort of. You might have a garderobe, a hole in the wall that drops your waist directly into the moat. Great idea. Except that your enemies know this, and yes, attackers sometimes climbed in through the waist chute. Talk about entering through the back door. So whether you're a farmer or a baron, medieval toileting is a humiliation ritual. It's cold, it's public, it's dangerous, and it's never not disgusting. One slip on a wet stone path, and you're face first in humanity's leftovers. And you still haven't brushed your teeth. But we'll get to that next. You survived the toilet. You deserve a reward, right? Maybe a nice breakfast, something warm, delicious, comforting. Sorry, this is medieval Europe. Nothing is comforting here. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is a grim affair. There are no eggs Benedict, no coffee machines sputtering awake, and certainly no avocado toast. You sit down or squat near the fire to a wooden bowl of something that looks like it was scraped off a muddy boot. Welcome to your daily ration of pottage. Pottage is a thick, gloopy stew made of whatever you can find. Grains, root vegetables, maybe a few beans if you're lucky. It's been simmering in the same pot for days, sometimes weeks, and new ingredients are just dumped on top of the old ones. It's less a recipe and more an ongoing edible experiment. On the side, a hunk of bread so hard it could deflect arrows. It's made from coarse rye or barley flour, often bulked up with sawdust, ground up acorns, or other creative ingredients, because wheat is a rich man's fantasy. This loaf is not your friend. You don't slice it, you negotiate with it. What about drinks? You're not sipping orange juice or an oat milk latte. You're drinking beer. Yes, beer at 6 a.m. Why? Because the water is teeming with parasites and filth. So you start your day with weak ale, low alcohol, high survivability. Kids drink it too. No one's happy about it, but at least it won't kill you immediately.
Want some meat or cheese? Dream on. That's for Sundays and Saints' feast days, and only if your lord is feeling generous. Most peasants don't eat meat more than a few times a year. As for fresh fruit, only when it's in season and not already fermented into wine. And don't even think about spices unless you're royalty. A pinch of pepper costs more than your monthly wages. Salt is valuable enough to be locked away. So you chew your gritty bread, gulp your medieval beer, and try not to think about the rat that may have nibbled your pottage in the night. Breakfast doesn't energize you. It just happens to you. And now that you're properly underfed, it's time to work, like your life depends on it, because it absolutely does. So you've eaten your sad medieval breakfast, and now it's time to get dressed. Not that that'll help. Your wardrobe consists of exactly one outfit. One. It's a rough wool tunic or a linen shift that you've worn every day for months, possibly years. There's no such thing as seasonal fashion. There's just wear this until it disintegrates or gives you a fungal infection. Underwear? Optional. If you're lucky, maybe a linen under tunic. If you're not, well, you're going commando under layers of scratchy, sweaty wool, all lovingly stitched together by someone who probably had no idea what a seam was supposed to look like. There's also no washing machine, no soap, and absolutely no dry cleaner in sight. So your clothes are stained, stiff, and scented like a compost pile that's been left to marinate in a pigsty. Even if you wanted to wash them, it's not easy. You'd have to haul water from a river or well, heat it over a fire, scrub your tunic on a board with ashes or lye, and hang it in the sun, which is out approximately 3 days a year. And don't get me started on shoes. If you own any, they're made of untreated leather, barely stitched together, and offer as much arch support as a banana peel. Most peasants just go barefoot, through mud, through dung, through medieval landmines, aka sharp rocks and disease puddles. All this means one thing. Your skin hates you. You itch constantly. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs live rent-free on your body. Everyone has them. Nobles? Lousy. Monks? Itchy. Children? Walking insect farms. No one escapes. You'll be scratching your armpit with a wooden spoon while chatting with the local priest, and no one will even bat an eye. Your skin is raw from rubbing, your scalp a battlefield of bites, and if you develop a rash, well, too bad. There's no dermatologist, no hydrocortisone, no one to tell you it's probably scabies. You just keep on suffering. And if you're lucky enough to not get an infection, great. That rash will simply accompany you for the next 6 months like an unwanted medieval sidekick. Now that you're dressed in itches and damp wool, it's time to flash that morning smile. Except you don't, because in the Middle Ages, smiling is a dangerous game. Not emotionally, but dentally. There's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no mouthwash, no floss. The concept of oral hygiene is about as popular as bathing, which is to say, not very. Some people might chew on a twig or rinse with wine or vinegar, but for the most part, your teeth are on their own, and they're not doing well. By the time you hit your mid-20s, your smile looks like something pulled from a haunted crypt. Cavities are rampant, gums are swollen, and those aren't just food stains on your teeth. That's decay. You have more rot in your mouth than a medieval root cellar. Toothaches? Get used to them. They're like medieval weather, always there in the background. The kind of pain that makes you consider praying, drinking, or pulling the tooth out yourself with a pair of pliers. And that's not a joke. That was the actual treatment. Dentists didn't really exist, but barber surgeons did. Yes, the same guy who cuts your hair is also pulling your molars out by candlelight with an iron hook and zero anesthesia. Infected tooth? Hope you like fevers, because without antibiotics, it can easily turn into sepsis and kill you. From a toothache. That's right, the same thing that sends us to a pharmacy today could be your funeral in the 1300s. And there's no relief on the social front either. Kissing? Good luck. Halitosis, bad breath, is everywhere. If you're single, you're not judged by your smile. You're judged by your land and your livestock. In short, your mouth is a battlefield, and it's losing the war. Now that your teeth are throbbing, let's head outside, because your real job, the one that will break your back, is just getting started. Time to head to work, except there's no office, no desk, no coffee break, and no chance of promotion. Your job, if you're like 90% of the population, is simple. Don't die while laboring for someone else's comfort. You're a peasant. Congratulations. That means you work the land that belongs to a lord who probably doesn't remember your name. You rise with the sun and stop only when it disappears behind the trees. Your tools? A wooden hoe, a rusty sickle, and whatever bones are still intact in your body. There's no weekend. There's no clocking out. There's only sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week. Sunday is supposed to be off, but only if you're not harvesting, fighting off raiders, or praying feverishly for your infected toe to stop turning black. The work is brutal. Fields are plowed by hand or with oxen if you're rich enough to afford one. You dig ditches, sow seeds, pull weeds, and carry water until your spine begins to resemble the letter S. No one cares if you're tired. No one's asking how your mental health is doing. If you're a woman, surprise, you don't just do field work. You also care for children, clean, cook, spin wool, feed animals, and pretend your husband's lice infestation isn't slowly migrating to your side of the bed. Children? They start helping out around age 5. No school, no toys, just a tiny wooden rake and a dream of one day not dying of the flu. And if you're one of the few who isn't a farmer, maybe you're a blacksmith, a tanner, or a cooper. Great. You still work with fire, chemicals, or animal guts all day in poorly ventilated sheds. The pay? Basically survival. The perks? Occasional bleeding. Break a bone? Too bad. Get a fever? Drink some warm beer and keep going. You can't afford to stop, not even for a day. Because if you don't work, you don't eat. And if you don't eat, well, medieval Europe has a solution for that. It's called being replaced. So you grip your shovel, ignore the blisters, and keep digging. Because in the Middle Ages, your job isn't a career. It's a slow-motion endurance test.
Now that your back is on fire from laboring in the fields, let's talk about the weather. Because in the Middle Ages, temperature is less about seasons and more about ongoing punishment from the sky. Let's start with winter. There's no insulation, no central heating, and no weatherproofing. Just wooden walls with gaps you could throw a chicken through. Your windows are covered with cloth, not glass. The fire in the hearth? Nice in theory, but you don't have enough wood fire to keep it going because wood is expensive, and gathering it from the forest is sometimes illegal. Yes, you can be executed for picking up the wrong stick from the wrong forest. You bundle up in your one damp wool tunic, huddle near the dying embers, and still wake up with your nose frozen. Your feet? Permanently cold, often damp. Your fingers, so stiff they feel like tiny medieval popsicles. Frostbite isn't diagnosed, it's just called bad luck. Now fast forward to summer. Sounds better, right? Wrong. In summer, your home turns into a clay oven. There's no fan, no cross breeze, and absolutely no deodorant. You sweat through your layers, but you can't remove them because showing too much skin is scandalous and also invites sunburn, insect bites, and social judgment. The flies are out in full force, attracted to your unwashed body and the smell of last week's goat stew that's still fermenting in the corner. Mosquitoes buzz by your ear while you sleep, assuming you can sleep through the sound of your neighbors yelling and babies crying. In the fields, the sun bakes you. No sunblock, no hat, unless you've fashioned one out of straw like a desperate scarecrow. And the worst part? You still have to work. Heat stroke is just called taking a bad turn. So you're either shivering in your own hovel, wondering if your toes will make it to spring, or you're sweating through your only pair of socks while your thighs chafe into oblivion. And the one thing that never changes, no matter the season, your clothes still itch, your food is still terrible, and your next job is still waiting. Welcome to climate control, medieval style. There is none. Feeling thirsty? Need to freshen up? Want to splash a little water on your face to wake up from this damp fever dream of a life? Too bad. In medieval times, water isn't your friend. It's trying to murder you quietly. Let's start with drinking. The nearby stream looks fresh, bubbling and clear like something out of a fantasy movie. But spoiler alert, it's not. Upstream, someone just dumped a chamber pot into it. And if not that, then a dead pig is probably decomposing in it. Parasites, bacteria, and the entire microbial army of medieval Europe are waiting in every sip. That's why people drank beer. Yes, beer. Even children. But before you imagine medieval kids doing keg stands, understand that it was small beer, weak in alcohol, strong in survival. The brewing process boiled the water, so it was safer than whatever flowed through the town ditch. Wine was another option, if you were rich enough to afford it and unconcerned with functioning properly before noon. What about bathing? Surely water was used for cleaning. In theory, yes. In practice, absolutely not. See, back then, people believed bathing actually opened your pores and let the disease in. That's right. Washing yourself was considered medically risky. You were cleaner, apparently, if you never removed the protective layer of filth caked onto your skin. Communal bathhouses did exist, but they quickly gained reputations as places for gossip, scandal, and sometimes full-on medieval extracurriculars. So, naturally, the church got involved and shut many down. Even if you did want to bathe, it was a full production. You'd need to fetch water from the well, boil it over a fire, fill a wooden tub that leaked, and then pray no one else in the house used it before you, or worse, after. And rainwater? Collected in open barrels where birds poop, insects breed, and moss thrives. Sounds refreshing, doesn't it? So, whether it's going in your mouth, on your body, or onto your crops, water in the Middle Ages is less of a life source and more of a gamble. One wrong gulp, and you're spending your final days sweating in a straw bed, clutching your stomach, and contemplating all your life choices. Next time you sip tap water, raise a glass for our ancestors. They didn't have the luxury of hydration without hazard. So you drank the water, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just stubbed your toe on a rock shaped like disappointment. Either way, you're sick. You need help. You need a doctor. Too bad you live in the Middle Ages, where medicine is really just polite torture with a theology degree. Let's start with the diagnosis. Everything wrong with you, whether it's a cough, a rash, a broken bone, or the creeping plague, is caused by your humors being out of balance. The four humors were blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. According to medieval science, your health depends on keeping them balanced, like some sort of internal soup. Got a fever? Too much blood. The answer? Bloodletting. That's right. Let's drain your life force into a bowl using a dull blade or a hungry leech. And yes, barbers were often the ones doing it. Imagine getting a haircut and a hemoglobin extraction in one sitting. 2 for 1, baby. Feeling sad or anxious? That's clearly an excess of black bile. The cure? Laxatives. Maybe a warm herbal purge. Or just prayers and a cold compress while everyone avoids eye contact with you and starts carving your coffin. Now, if you break a bone or get a nasty wound, you're in real trouble. There's no anesthesia, unless you count passing out from pain. Surgery is done with knives that haven't been cleaned since the Crusades. Tools are heated over a fire, not for sterilization, but because they just look scarier that way. Antibiotics? Centuries away. Germ theory? Not invented yet. They think disease comes from bad air or God being annoyed with your moral failings. Got a stomach ache? Must have been your sinful thoughts. Hope you like confessing while vomiting. If your condition gets worse, they'll be treated with more leeches, possibly some crushed beetles, and a priest at your bedside giving last rites, just in case. At this point, they're preparing for the cure known as death. And if, by some miracle, you recover, everyone just assumes God took pity on you. The doctor takes full credit, and the leech gets promoted. So yes, in the medieval ages, medicine is less about healing and more about surviving the cure. After a long day of labor, lice, and leeches, it's finally time to eat. You shuffle back to your hovel, stomach growling, ready for the one joy left in life, a warm meal. Bad news. Your meal is probably trying to kill you. Let's begin with the basics. Food preservation doesn't really exist. There's no fridge, no freezer, just salt, smoke, or the hope that winter air keeps things fresh. Your meat, if you're lucky enough to have any, has been hanging for days, covered in flies, marinating in a questionable brine, and possibly shared with a rat or two.
Bread is the cornerstone of the medieval diet, but even that isn't safe. In bad harvest years, desperate peasants bulk it up with bark, sawdust, or even clay to make it stretch. And if it's rye season, there's a bonus: ergot, a fungus that causes convulsions, hallucinations, and sometimes death. It's like eating bread laced with LSD and tetanus. Vegetables? Only if they're in season. And you know what's always in season? Turnips. So many turnips. Boiled, mashed, or floating in pottage, which, if you remember from Chapter 3, is basically a hot swamp of mystery ingredients that's been simmering since your great-grandfather's funeral. Fruit might be available in the fall, but it rots quickly. And sugar is rare, expensive, and hoarded by the rich to show off their blackened teeth. Dairy is another gamble. Fresh milk spoils in hours. Butter and cheese fare better, but they're loaded with bacteria. People eat them anyway because, frankly, it's either that or chew your boot leather. And let's talk about seasoning. Spices like pepper, cinnamon, or nutmeg are worth more than gold. For the average peasant, flavor comes from onions, salt, if you're lucky, and pain. Most meals taste like wet burlap sprinkled with sadness. But food isn't just a health hazard, it's a political one. Game animals belong to the Lord,
not you. Caught poaching a rabbit, you could be fined, imprisoned, or even executed. That's right, your dinner could get you hanged. So as you sit down to eat your gray stew by flickering firelight, remember, every bite is a risk. But you eat anyway, because in the Middle Ages, food doesn't nourish. It tests you. It's evening now. You've worked, suffered, and barely digested your suspicious stew. You might think the day is winding down, but don't get too relaxed, because God is watching. So is the priest. And so is your neighbor Agnes, who will absolutely rat you out if you miss Mass. In medieval Europe, religion isn't just part of life, it is life. The church controls your calendar, your laws, your education, if you can read, your birth, your marriage, your death, and everything in between. Think of it as your spiritual landlord, and you're always behind on rent. Every day is structured around prayer bells. The town church bell rings in the morning, noon, and night, not because people need reminders, but because missing prayer is a sin. Forget to bow? Sin. Eat meat on a Friday? Sin. Think about your neighbor's wife in that one dream? Double sin. And yes, hell is very real, vividly real. Priests describe it in glorious detail. Rivers of fire, lakes of boiling blood, demons with pitchforks, and eternal wailing. If the plague doesn't scare you, eternal damnation definitely will. You can't read the Bible yourself because it's written in Latin, a language reserved for monks, clergy, and that one noble kid who's too good for dirt. You rely on the church to interpret everything for you. That means if the priest says your crop failure is because you didn't pray hard enough, well, time to kneel harder. Tithes, a tenth of everything you own, are mandatory. If you grow wheat, you give wheat. If you raise chickens, you give eggs. If you have nothing, congratulations, you're spiritually bankrupt and financially doomed. Holidays? They're holy days, dozens of them. And while they offer breaks from labor, they're not for fun. They're for attending Mass, fasting, confessing your sins, and reminding yourself that joy is a dangerous indulgence. Questioning the church is dangerous. Heretics are burned, witches are drowned, blasphemers are flogged, and skeptics are, well, quickly reformed. So you go through the motions. You chant, you bow, you pray that your soul, after enduring this dirt-covered life, might finally land in paradise, assuming the priest likes you. Because in the Middle Ages, God may be merciful, but the church, not so much. If you thought being a medieval peasant was rough, try doing it as a woman. All the filth, famine, and fear, plus childbirth, subservience, and social invisibility. In the Middle Ages, being a woman is like playing on hard mode with no health potions and no restart button. From birth, a girl's life path is pretty much locked in. Marry young, bear children, serve your husband, die tired. Education? Not likely. Unless you're from a noble family and sent to a convent, your intellectual development stops around the time you learn how to churn butter and patch a tunic. Marriage happens early. Really early. It's not weird to be betrothed at 12 and pregnant by 14. It's not about love, it's about land, livestock, and alliances. Your opinion is not required. Once married, you're basically your husband's property. Your job is to produce heirs, feed everyone, keep the house running, and not complain. Because complaining might get you branded a nag, or worse, a witch. That label comes with a complimentary drowning or burning, depending on local fashion. Childbirth is a death lottery. There's no prenatal care, no sterile tools, no anesthesia. Midwives do their best, but even minor complications can mean death for the mother, the child, or both. Some women survive 10 pregnancies. Many don't survive 2. And don't worry, once the baby is out, your work increases. Now you have a screaming infant in lice-ridden hut, and you're expected to nurse, cook, clean, and still help in the fields. You don't get a break. You are the break for everyone else. If you're unmarried, you're suspicious. If you're widowed, you're vulnerable. If you're outspoken, you're dangerous. Women who didn't conform were often accused of witchcraft, especially if they had herbal knowledge, a strong personality, or just looked at someone funny on a Tuesday morning. Even in the church, your role is limited. Nuns lived under strict rules, no speaking without permission, no freedom of movement, and your spiritual worth always ranked below men. In short, if you're a woman in the Middle Ages, you're expected to endure, obey, reproduce, and suffer in silence, ideally while smiling. Because even in a time of universal suffering, women were somehow expected to suffer gracefully. So far, you've battled filth, starvation, social injustice, and possibly a goat. But just when you think your day can't get any worse, here comes violence, loud, bloody, and often completely acceptable by medieval standards. Let's be clear, the Middle Ages were not peaceful. The idea of law and order mostly meant hope the local lord isn't in a bad mood. Violence is everywhere. In the home, in the streets, on the battlefield, in church disputes, and sometimes in line at the communal bread oven. Crime is common, punishment is brutal, and justice is more performance art than protection. Steal a loaf of bread? You could lose a hand. Accused of lying? Your tongue might be pierced. Gossiped too much? Meet the scold's bridle, a metal mask strapped to your head with a bar in your mouth, for correction, of course.
Let's say you're accused of something serious: heresy, theft, witchcraft. How do you prove your innocence? By being tortured, obviously. Welcome to trial by ordeal. One version, you stick your hand in boiling water to retrieve a stone. If it heals without infection in 3 days, you're innocent. If not, you're guilty. Another option, you're tossed into a river. If you sink, you're innocent, and probably dead. If you float, you're guilty, and will be punished anyway. It's like a medieval game show where the prize is survival, and the host is actively rooting against you. And if you're sentenced to death, that's a public event. Executions are performed in front of cheering crowds. Hangings, beheadings, burnings. Sometimes people bring snacks. It's the medieval equivalent of cable TV. Domestic violence? Completely normal. Husbands were allowed, even expected, to discipline their wives and children. Street fights? Commonplace. You could be beaten just for looking the wrong way at a noble's horse. And war? Always simmering. Local feuds, territorial disputes, religious crusades. Someone's always marching off to stab someone else in the name of honor, God, or boredom. Violence isn't a breakdown of society in the Middle Ages. It is society. Everyone lives with the constant knowledge that life is fragile, justice is arbitrary, and your neighbor might bash your head in over a pig. So, walk carefully, keep your eyes down, and never trust anyone with a club. At this point, you've made it through the lice, the leeches, the laundryless misery, and the looming threat of public disembowelment. But now comes the final chapter of most medieval lives, an early and unglamorous death. If you're alive and still breathing past the age of 40, you're practically a celebrity. You might even be referred to as the Old One, which is less of a nickname and more of a statistical miracle. Let's break it down. The average life expectancy hovers around 30 to 40 years, but that number is dragged down heavily by infant mortality. Nearly half of all children died before reaching age 5.
Disease, malnutrition, or one bad winter was all it took. No vaccines, no antibiotics, no hope. If you survived childhood, you entered adulthood already exhausted. Work began as soon as you could walk upright, and by 25, your joints creaked like a monastery door. You might be missing several teeth, a missing finger, and most of your original optimism. Women faced a particularly deadly gauntlet, childbirth. It was one of the leading causes of death for medieval women. No pain relief, no medical intervention, just prayer, hot water, and someone holding your hand while you bled out on a straw-stuffed cot. For men, the dangers were different, but equally relentless. Farming accidents, infections from minor wounds, a neighbor's drunken rage, a crusade gone sideways. Even walking to the market could be risky if you crossed paths with a bored bandit or an angry tax collector. Death could also come quietly, from the plague, which turned cities into cemeteries overnight, or from famine, which could last entire seasons, thinning out entire villages, or from bad luck, like eating spoiled grain and spending your final hours hallucinating and screaming at the walls. And funerals? You were lucky if you got one. Bodies were often buried quickly to avoid disease. No embalming, no polished coffins, just a hole, a few murmured prayers, and a shallow mound of earth, if there was enough space left in the churchyard. So yes, in medieval times, life was brutal, short, and constantly under siege by death in all its casual forms. You didn't retire, you just stopped showing up. And speaking of exits, let's move on to your final chapter. The medieval dream dies. So how's your day been? You've woken up in filth, relieved yourself into a bucket, brushed your teeth with wishful thinking, nearly passed out from hunger, worked until your spine cried for mercy, scratched your way through itchy wool, prayed to not get plague, and barely dodged a public execution for owning a squirrel. Welcome to a single day in medieval Europe. Still dreaming of becoming a knight? Think again. That romanticized version of the Middle Ages, gallant swordsmen, noble ladies in towers, heroic battles and feasts in candlelit great halls, it's a myth, polished by fairy tales and fantasy books. In truth, the medieval world was gritty, cruel, and deeply unfair. Hierarchy was everything. If you were born poor, you stayed poor. If you were born rich, congratulations. You had a better chance of surviving, but you were still one bad stew away from dysentery and a hasty burial. Even the nobles weren't immune to misery. Castles were drafty stone refrigerators filled with fleas, smoke, and politically motivated marriages. Sure, you had a fur cloak and a glabble of wine, but also a 50% chance of dying in a skirmish or from an infected splinter. Not exactly luxury. The simpler times weren't simple. They were relentless. Everything took longer. Everything hurt more. Everything, from childbirth to chewing, came with consequences. Life was survival, not leisure. And if you did find a quiet moment to think, to dream, to imagine something better, there wasn't much you could do with it. No upward mobility, no modern medicine, no internet to Google, "What's this weird rash?" You lived, suffered, worked, and died within a 10-mile radius of where you were born. But here's the wildest part. Through all of this, people still laughed, sang songs, told stories, fell in love, and found meaning. Not because life was easy, but because humans are stubborn like that. Even in the darkest chapters, they made space for light. So tonight, when you slip into your clean bed with indoor plumbing, antibiotics, and central heating, maybe say a quiet thank you to the modern world and to your ancestors who fought rats, famine, and feudalism so you wouldn't have to.
But your life isn't just one day. It's a cycle, a relentless loop of seasons and suffering, where the scenery changes, but the misery remains the same. Your world is small, confined to the village and the fields around it. And in this world, you are never alone, but you are always isolated. Let's talk about your neighbors. You don't have friends in the modern sense. You have alliances. The family in the hut next door might share their fire on a cold night, but they'll also watch your chickens with hungry eyes. Community is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you need it to survive, for the harvest, for raising a barn, for collective defense against whatever comes out of the woods at night. On the other hand, it's a prison of judgment. There's Alara, the old woman who knows too much about herbs and is whispered about when a cow falls sick. There's Gregor, the man with a temper who beats his wife, and everyone hears it, but no one says a word. Gossip isn't entertainment, it's a weapon, a currency of whispers that can ruin a reputation or even end a life. Everyone is watching. Everyone is listening. It's the neighborhood watch, medieval style, fueled by boredom and simmering suspicion.
And looming over this tiny, fragile world is the shadow of the manor. The lord of the land is a distant, godlike figure you might only see a few times a year. He owns you, not just the land you work on, but your time, your labor, your children's future. He owns the river you can't fish in, the forest you can't hunt in, and the mill where you have to pay to grind your own grain. When he rides through the village with his hunting party, it's a spectacle of terror and awe. Men in fine clothes on powerful horses trampling the very fields you bleed for. You are expected to bow, to be invisible, to show nothing but gratitude for your own subjugation. And when his tax collector comes, a cold dread settles over the village. You hand over a portion of your meager harvest, the food that was supposed to get your family through the winter, knowing that it will end up on a feasting table you can't even imagine. This isn't just economics. This is the architecture of your reality. You are the foundation, and your purpose is to be crushed under the weight of those above you. And while the Lord threatens your livelihood, your own body wages a constant private war against you. We've talked about the big killers, plague, infection, childbirth. But what about the slow, grinding breakdown of the human machine? Your vision blurs with age, but eyeglasses are a fantastical invention for wealthy monks. You simply learn to see less. Your hearing fades, but there are no aids, only the growing silence of a world you can no longer fully grasp. Your teeth, we've mentioned, are crumbling tombstones. But think about the daily reality of that, the constant dull ache that flares into blinding agony. You can't chew properly, so you subsist on soft, mushy foods, which only makes your health worse. Folk remedies offer little comfort. A poultice of dung and herbs, a prayer to a saint who specializes in tooth decay. These are acts of desperation, not medicine. Skin diseases are everywhere. Boils, sores, rashes from filth and poor nutrition. The itch is a permanent state of being. You scratch until you bleed, which invites infection, which leads to fever, which might lead to the priest at your bedside. It's a vicious, unending cycle of discomfort. And let's not forget the seasons. We've touched on winter's cold and summer's heat, but each season brings its own special brand of suffering. Spring isn't a time of cheerful rebirth. It's the hunger gap, when the winter stores have run out and the new crops haven't grown yet. You eat boiled nettles and tree bark,
and watch your children grow thinner. Autumn isn't a cozy season of harvest festivals. It's a frantic race against the first frost, working from before dawn until after dusk, your hands raw, your back screaming, knowing that every grain you drop is a meal lost to the winter. Childhood is not a time of innocence, it's an apprenticeship for suffering. You learn to fear God, your Father, and the Lord in that order. Play is a luxury. Your toys are a stick and a rock. By the age of 10, you are a miniature adult, expected to contribute, to work, to be silent. The high infant mortality rate means you've probably seen one or more of your siblings die. Grief is not processed, it's simply absorbed into the background noise of survival. And old age? Old age is not a reward, it's a burden. Once you can no longer work the fields, you become another mouth to feed. There is no retirement, no pension. You are at the mercy of your children, who are already struggling to feed themselves. You watch the world move on, your body failing, until one day you simply don't wake up. It's considered a good death. But surely there are moments of joy, a wedding, a festival. Yes, they exist, but they are not the charming, rustic celebrations you imagine. A wedding is a brief, drunken escape. The ale is watery, the music is out of tune, and the dancing is mostly just stomping in the mud to keep warm. It's less a celebration of love and more a public transfer of property, with a feast if the families are lucky. Saints' days and festivals are sanctioned breaks from labor, but they are still steeped in ritual and obligation. You go to church, you pray, you might get an extra ration of bread, but the joy is fleeting, a tiny flicker of light in an overwhelming darkness. It doesn't change the fundamental truth of your existence, that your life is not your own. And then there is the fear that lives outside the church walls, the fear of the unknown. The world beyond your village is a place of monsters and magic. The forest at night isn't peaceful. It's a living, breathing entity filled with spirits, goblins, and things that have no name. People disappear. Livestock is found mysteriously slain. A strange fog is an omen. A crow landing on your roof is a message from the other side. Superstition is as powerful as faith. You leave out a bowl of milk for the fairies, not out of kindness, but to appease them, to keep them from stealing your baby or souring your milk. You wear charms to ward off the evil eye. You believe in curses, in witches, in the power of a muttered word to bring ruin. The world is not governed by science. It is a chaotic, terrifying place where divine and demonic forces are locked in a constant battle, and you are caught in the middle. So, as you lie on your straw mattress at the end of another exhausting day, you're not just tired, you're haunted. Haunted by the certainty of your own hardship, by the ghosts of the children who didn't make it, by the watchful eyes of your neighbors, by the shadow of your Lord, and by the whispers from the dark woods. This is the world that has been erased by stories of Camelot and Robin Hood, a world where survival was the only ambition, and a painless death was the greatest luxury. It's a world built not on stone castles, but on the bones of millions who lived and died without ever knowing their names would be forgotten. So, the next time you feel the rain on your face, taste fresh fruit, or simply turn on a light switch, remember this. Remember the dirt, the darkness, and the debt of gratitude you owe to the simple, unbelievable luck of being born now and not then. Let's delve deeper into the sounds and senses of your world, because your life is not quiet. It's a constant cacophonous assault on the ears, a soundtrack of survival that offers no peace. Silence is a luxury reserved for the dead. From the moment you wake, your world is filled with noise. The first sound is not birdsong, but the hacking cough of your father, a dry, rattling sound that seems to echo the decay and the damp walls of your hut. Then comes the grunt of the pig jostling in the corner, the frantic scratching of chickens in the dirt, and the thin, hungry wail of your youngest sibling. There is no privacy for sound. Every sigh, every argument, every bodily function is a public performance. Step outside and the symphony grows. The village is a chorus of industry and desperation. You hear the rhythmic, monotonous thud of an axe splitting wood, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer hitting an anvil, a sound that is both the promise of tools and a reminder of weapons. You hear the lowing of cattle being led to pasture, the bleating of sheep, the squeal of a pig being slaughtered for the Lord's table, a sound too close to a human scream for comfort.
Women shout to each other across the mud-caked path, their voices sharp and weary. Children shriek, not always in play, but often in squabbles over a scrap of food or a patch of dry ground. The air is thick with the buzz of flies, a constant, irritating hum that never truly goes away. And underneath it all, the ever-present squelch of feet and hooves in the mud, a wet, sloppy percussion that accompanies every step you take. The church bell, your merciless alarm clock, also dictates your day. It rings for morning prayers, for midday labor, for evening vespers. It rings to announce a birth, a wedding, or, more often, a death. Its tone is not melodic. It is a tolling, a heavy, metallic sound that hangs in the air, a constant reminder of God's judgment and the fleeting nature of your own life. But there are other, more terrifying sounds. The howl of a wolf pack in the distant forest at night, a sound that makes the fire in your hearth feel impossibly small. The sudden panic shout of fire, a word that can turn your entire village into a funeral pyre in minutes, with your thatched roof hut acting as perfect kindling. And then there is the sound of authority, the thunder of hooves as the Lord's knights ride through without warning, their armor creaking, their horses snorting. It's a sound that makes everyone freeze, a sound of power so absolute it doesn't need words. Or the cold official voice of the reeve, the Lord's administrator, reading out new taxes or punishments, his words falling like stones on a silent, resentful crowd. There is no music as you know it, no headphones to escape into, no playlists to lift your spirits. On a festival day, you might hear the shrill, manic sound of a pipe or the rough thump of a drum. But it's a frantic, often drunken noise, a brief explosion of energy before the silence and the suffering return. The only consistent music in your life is the sound of your own labor, the swish of the scythe, the groan of wood, the rasp of your own breath as you toil under the uncaring sun. This constant noise is more than just a backdrop. It's a form of psychological erosion. There is no quiet place to think, no sanctuary for the mind. Your thoughts are constantly interrupted, your anxieties amplified by the sounds of the world around you.
The noise is a cage, and you are trapped inside it. Now let's talk about the things you own, which won't take long. Your concept of possessions is radically different from the modern one. You don't accumulate things for comfort or status. You have tools for survival, and that's about it. Your most valuable possession is probably a knife. A simple iron blade with a wooden handle, used for everything from cutting your bread to skinning a rabbit, if you're lucky and daring enough to catch one, to defending yourself. You guard it with your life, because your life might literally depend on it. You have one set of clothes, as we've discussed, a wooden bowl for your pottage, maybe a spoon carved from bone, a water skin. These are not sentimental items. If they break, you might not be able to replace them for months. The family shares everything. There is no my bowl or my spoon. There is only the bowl. Wealth is not measured in coin. You may never touch a silver penny in your entire life. Wealth is measured in livestock. A family with a cow is considered well off. A pig is a sign of prosperity. Chickens are a source of precious eggs, a rare luxury. These animals are not pets. They are your walking, breathing bank account, your insurance policy against starvation. Losing one to disease or a predator is a catastrophic financial blow. The land you work is not yours. The hut you live in is not yours. You are a tenant in a world owned by others. This lack of ownership creates a profound sense of impermanence. You have nothing to pass on to your children except a legacy of labor and a place in the same dirt-floored hut. There is no books, no art, no decorations on the walls. Your world is stripped bare of anything that isn't essential for the next 24 hours of survival. The very idea of a hobby, of doing something purely for pleasure, is an alien concept. Your leisure time is spent mending your tunic, sharpening your tools, or simply collapsing from exhaustion. This profound poverty of possessions shapes your mind. You don't think about the future in terms of ambition or dreams. You think about it in terms of the next harvest, the next winter, the next tax collection. Your world is immediate, visceral, and unforgiving. There is no room for sentimentality when your entire existence is balanced on the edge of a knife. And as you drift off to sleep, if you're lucky, you don't dream of a better life. You simply pray you don't have nightmares about this one. Let's explore the landscape of your mind. Because in a world with no entertainment, no education, and no escape, your own thoughts can become both a sanctuary and a prison. What does a medieval peasant think about? It's not the grand philosophical questions that occupy your time. Your concerns are far more primal. Your daily mental checklist is a litany of anxieties. Is there enough grain to last until spring? Is the strange cough your child developed the beginning of the end? Did the Lord's reeve look at you with suspicion yesterday? Will the rains come too early or too late? These are not abstract worries. They are life and death calculations that run on a constant loop in your head. The concept of a world view is simple, because your world is simple. It extends from your village to the next, and perhaps to the market town you visit once a year, a journey that feels as epic and dangerous as a modern trip across a continent. The news you receive is not from a screen, but from traveling merchants, pilgrims, or soldiers, and it's always fragmented, exaggerated, and weeks, if not months, out of date. You might hear of a war in a distant land called France, or of a new pope in Rome. But these are like stories from another planet. They have little bearing on the immediate, crushing reality of your life.
Your sense of time is different, too. It's not measured in minutes and hours, but in the slow, cyclical rhythm of the seasons and the church bells. There is before sunrise, midday, after sunset. Time is not something you manage, it's something you endure. The future is not a landscape of infinite possibilities, it is a repetition of the past. You expect your life to be exactly like your father's, and your children's lives to be exactly like yours. The idea of progress, of things getting better, is a foreign, almost heretical concept. And what about happiness? You don't pursue it as a goal. You experience it in fleeting, unexpected moments. The rare day when the sun is warm but not scorching. The taste of a wild berry found on the edge of the field. The sound of a shared, tired laugh with your family at the end of a long day. These are not grand joys. They are small, precious pockets of relief in a sea of hardship. They are the moments that keep you human, the tiny sparks that prevent your soul from being completely extinguished by the daily grind. Now, let's talk about the larger society you are a part of, because you are a cog in a vast, brutal machine. The feudal system is not just a political structure, it's a pyramid of power built on your back. At the bottom, there's you, the serf, the peasant. You are bound to the land, not a slave, but not truly free either. You cannot leave without the Lord's permission. You cannot marry without his approval. You cannot even bake your own bread in your own oven. You must use his and pay for the privilege. Above you is the lord of the manor, a minor noble who holds power over your village. He might be a knight, a baron, or simply a man whose ancestors were better at violence than yours. He lives in a stone house, not a grand castle, but a fortified structure that seems like a palace compared to your hut. He provides protection, which mostly means protecting you from other lords who might want to steal you and your labor. In return, you provide him with everything: food, work, and loyalty. It is not a fair trade. Above the Lord are the great nobles, the dukes, the earls, the powerful men who play the game of thrones with armies and alliances. They are distant, almost mythical figures to you. And at the very top is the king, a man whose face you will never see, but whose wars you might be forced to fight in, and whose laws, however arbitrary, dictate your existence. This structure is held together not just by force, but by faith. The Church teaches that this order is divinely ordained. God placed the king on his throne, the Lord in his manor, and you in the mud. To question this is to question God himself. It is a powerful form of social control, a spiritual justification for your own oppression. And justice? Justice is not blind. It is a tool of the powerful. If another peasant steals your chicken, you might take it to the village elder. But if the Lord's man takes your chicken, there is nothing you can do. If a noble commits a crime, he might pay a fine. If you commit the same crime, you might be hanged. The law is a reflection of the social order. It protects
property, not people. Especially not people like you. There is no social mobility. You are born into your station, and you will die in it. The idea of making something of yourself does not exist. Your identity is not something you create. It is something you inherit. You are a farmer because your father was a farmer. You are poor because he was poor. This is the unchangeable reality of your world. And yet, even within this rigid system, there is a complex web of human relationships. There are rivalries between villages, feuds between families that last for generations, and a deep-seated distrust of outsiders. A stranger arriving in your village is not a welcome guest. They are a potential threat, a carrier of disease, or a spy for another lord. This is the world you navigate every day, a world of stark contrasts, the profound faith and the brutal violence, the communal bonds and the deep-seated suspicions, the unyielding social order, and the chaotic, unpredictable nature of life itself. You are a single, anonymous thread in this vast, dark tapestry. And your only job is to not let that thread break before its time. Let's talk about beauty, because even in a world defined by filth and function, the human eye seeks it out. But your definition of beauty is not the same as ours. It is not found in art galleries or manicured gardens. It is found in the raw, untamed, and often brutal landscape that surrounds you. You have no paintings on your walls, no sculptures in your home. The art you see is carved into the stone of the village church. Stern-faced saints, grotesque gargoyles, and terrifying scenes of the Last Judgment. This is not art for art's sake. It is a visual sermon, a constant, chilling reminder of the stakes of your mortal life. The beauty is in the message, and the message is fear. Your world is not a palette of vibrant, artificial colors. It is a world of earth tones, the brown of the mud, the gray of the winter sky, the faded green of your tunic. A flash of bright color is a rare and startling event. The deep red of a noble's cloak, the brilliant blue of a stained glass window in the church, these are the colors of power and divinity, colors you can look at but never possess. Your beauty you experience is found in nature, but it is a wild, untamed beauty. You might pause for a moment at the edge of the field to watch the sun set, not as a romantic spectacle, but as a signal that your day of labor is finally over. The colors bleeding across the sky are a brief, silent spectacle before the terrifying darkness of night descends. You might see beauty in the intricate patterns of frost on a winter morning, even as the cold seeps into your bones. You might notice the delicate structure of a spider's web, glistening with dew, a marvel of natural engineering in a world where human engineering is crude and clumsy. But nature is also your greatest adversary. The forest that provides your firewood is also home to wolves and outlaws. The river that sometimes gives you a fish is also the source of deadly fevers and floods that can wipe out your crops. The beauty of a summer storm is overshadowed by the terror of lightning striking your hut or hail destroying the harvest. Your relationship with the natural world is one of deep, fearful respect.
You do not see it as something to be conquered or controlled. You see it as a powerful, unpredictable force, a manifestation of God's will or the whims of older, darker spirits. You live in nature, but you are not its master. You are its subject. And what about human beauty? Your standards are not shaped by magazines or movies. They are shaped by the brutal realities of survival. A beautiful woman is not necessarily one with delicate features or a slender figure. She is strong, with wide hips for childbirth and capable hands for work. A handsome man is not one with a chiseled jaw, but one with a powerful back for plowing and the strength to defend his family.
Health is the ultimate form of beauty. Clear skin, strong teeth, a body free from the ravages of disease and malnutrition. These are the signs of a good life, a life blessed by fortune or by God. But they are incredibly rare. Most people you know bear the physical marks of their hardship. Scars from accidents, missing teeth, the stooped posture of a lifetime of labor, the pockmarks of diseases survived. Your body is a map of your suffering, and there is no cosmetic to hide the terrain. Love and marriage, as we've touched upon, are rarely about romantic attraction. They are practical arrangements, but that doesn't mean love doesn't exist. It just grows in a different soil. It's not the fiery passion of poetry, but the quiet, resilient bond forged through shared hardship. It's the unspoken understanding between you and your spouse as you work side by side in the field. It's the protective instinct you feel for your children, a fierce, primal love that exists in a world where their survival is never guaranteed. These moments of human connection are the most profound form of beauty you will ever know. They're not grand or dramatic. They're the small, essential acts of loyalty and care that make an unlivable life just barely bearable. A shared crust of bread, a hand to help you up when you fall in the mud, the warmth of another body next to yours on a freezing winter night. This is the beauty that history books often miss. Not the beauty of cathedrals and crowns, but the quiet, desperate beauty of human resilience. The ability to find a sliver of light in a world consumed by shadow. It is a fragile beauty, easily broken, but it is the only kind you have. And you cling to it, because without it, there would be nothing left at all. So, as the day ends and you prepare for the darkness once more, you are not just a collection of aches and anxieties. You are also a vessel of these small, hard-won moments. You carry the memory of the sunset, the taste of the berry, the feeling of a shared, tired silence. These are the threads of light in your dark tapestry. They don't make the darkness go away, but they make it possible to face the coming of another dawn. Let's talk about the end. Not just the end of your day, but the end of your life. Because in your world, death is not a distant, abstract concept. It is a constant, familiar neighbor. You see it in the faces of the sick. You hear it in the tolling of the church bell, and you smell it on the air during a plague year. There is no growing old gracefully. The elderly are not revered for their wisdom. They are often seen as a drain on a family's scarce resources. To live past 50 is to be an anomaly, a survivor of 1,000 tiny wars against disease, hunger, and accident.
The body of an old person is a testament to this long battle, bent, scarred, and worn down to its essential components. When your time comes, it will likely not be a peaceful passing in a comfortable bed. It will be a fight. A fever that rages for days, leaving you delirious and dehydrated. An infected wound that turns your blood to poison. The slow, creeping emptiness of starvation during a harsh winter. Or simply the final, quiet surrender of a body that has been worked past its limits. The moments before death are not filled with profound final words or tearful goodbyes. They are often filled with pain, confusion, and fear. The greatest fear is not of death itself, but of dying in sin. The arrival of the priest is a double-edged sword. He brings the comfort of last rites, the promise of a soul cleansed for its journey to the afterlife. But his presence is also the final confirmation that there is no hope left for the body. The family gathers, not in quiet reflection, but in a practical, almost grim preparation for what comes next. Grief is a luxury that must be balanced with the immediate needs of the living. A death means one less person to work the fields, one more mouth they can no longer feed, and the cost of a burial, however meager. Your funeral will be a simple, hasty affair. Your body is washed, not by a professional, but by the women of your family. You are wrapped in a simple linen shroud because a wooden coffin is an expense few can afford. You are carried to the churchyard, a small procession of family and neighbors, their faces etched with the familiar weariness of loss. The priest murmurs a few prayers in Latin, a language you never understood in life and will not understand in death. Your body is lowered into a shallow grave, often alongside others, in a crowded space that has seen countless generations return to the earth. A simple wooden cross, if anything, marks your passing. Within a few seasons, it too will decay and disappear, leaving your final resting place as anonymous as your life. And what happens after? In your mind, the afterlife is a stark and terrifying geography. Heaven is a distant, shimmering paradise, a place of eternal light and rest, but it is a destination for saints and the truly righteous, a standard you know you have never met. Hell is a much more vivid and immediate reality, a fiery abyss of eternal torment described in terrifying detail from the church pulpit. But for most people like you, the destination is purgatory, a place of cleansing and suffering where your soul must be purified of its countless small sins before it can even hope to enter heaven. The duration of this torment, you are taught, can be shortened by the prayers of the living. This is the final, desperate hope that your family will remember you, that they will light a candle, that their prayers will ease your passage through the fires of purification. This is the end of your story. A life of relentless labor, punctuated by moments of fleeting joy and constant fear, ending in a simple return to the earth. You leave behind no monuments, no written words, no legacy of wealth or power. Your only legacy is the survival of your children, who will inherit your name, your station, and your struggle. You are a single, forgotten ripple in the vast ocean of history. So now let us pull back. Let us leave the mud, the smoke, and the silence of the grave, and return to our own time, to a world of comfort, of knowledge, of possibilities so vast they would seem like divine magic to the person you just were. The life we have just witnessed was not an exception. It was the norm. It was the lived reality for the overwhelming majority of people for over 1,000 years. The grand castles, the epic battles, the tales of chivalry, they were the tiny, glittering exceptions to an overwhelming rule of silent, anonymous suffering. The next time you open a refrigerator filled with food, turn on a hot shower, or read a book, remember the world that existed before these things. A world where every meal was a victory, every day survived a miracle, and every moment of peace a treasure. The gap between their reality and ours is the greatest story of all. It's a story of human resilience, of the slow, painful, and often bloody climb out of the darkness. They were the foundation upon which our world was built, a foundation made of sweat, of bone, and of the quiet, desperate hope that one day life might be something more than just survival. And for us, it is. Never forget that.
Against the cool air of the chamber. You sit on the edge of the bed, feeling the mattress give slightly under your weight. The sensation is extraordinary after so many days on hard surfaces. The straw rustles softly as you shift position, a sound that seems musical after the oppressive silence of the cellar. You run your hands over the rough blankets, feeling their texture, their warmth, their promise of comfort. Lying down is almost overwhelming. Your body sinks into the mattress and every muscle seems to sigh with relief. The blankets are heavy and warm, wrapping around you like a cocoon. Your head falls back against the pillow and you close your eyes, feeling the tension drain from your body like water from a broken vessel.
The bed cradles you gently, supporting your aching back and tired limbs. The blankets trap your body heat, creating a cocoon of warmth that gradually penetrates your chilled flesh. For the first time in days, you're truly comfortable, truly safe, truly at rest. Sleep comes like a tide, rising from the depths of your exhaustion to claim you completely. Your breathing slows and deepens. Your heartbeat becomes steady and strong. The pain in your joints fades to a distant memory, and the hunger that has gnawed at you for days becomes irrelevant. There is only the bed, the blankets, and the profound peace of complete rest. Your dreams are formless and gentle, filled with images of warmth and safety. You dream of sunlight streaming through windows, of soft beds and warm fires, of simple pleasures that most people take for granted. But you've earned these dreams through suffering, through endurance, through the willingness to sacrifice everything for the mission. The night passes in deep, restorative sleep. Your body begins the long process of healing, of recovering from the ordeal you've endured. Your muscles relax, your joints decompress. Your mind finally releases the constant vigilance that has defined your existence for the past week. You sleep like the dead, but you're very much alive. Dawn brings no urgency to wake. For the first time in days, you have nowhere to go, nothing to watch, no mission to complete. You can simply lie in the warm bed, feeling the soft mattress beneath you, the gentle weight of the blankets above you. The sensation is so pleasant that you almost weep with gratitude. When you finally wake, the sun is high in the sky. You've slept for perhaps 12 hours, deeper and more completely than you have in years. Your body feels heavy and sluggish, but the pain has receded to manageable levels.
You're still weak, still exhausted, but you're alive. You've survived another mission, endured another test of your profession's demands. You lie in bed for a long time, savoring the simple pleasure of being horizontal, of being warm, of being safe. The mission is over, the ordeal complete. Soon you'll have to rise, to eat, to begin the process of recovery. But for now, you simply exist in the perfect peace of deep rest. This is your reward for the suffering you've endured. Not gold, or glory, or recognition, but simply the profound pleasure of lying in a warm bed after days of cold and discomfort. It's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. The world continues its business outside your chamber, but you're no longer part of it. You're suspended in a timeless moment of perfect rest, perfect peace, perfect comfort. The bed embraces you like a lover. The blankets protect you like armor. The quiet chamber shelters you like a sanctuary. And in this moment of profound rest, you understand something fundamental about your profession. The suffering isn't just an occupational hazard, it's what makes the simple pleasures meaningful. The cold makes warmth precious. The hunger makes food sacred. The discomfort makes comfort divine. You close your eyes and surrender to the deep, dreamless sleep that your body craves. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new missions, new ordeals to endure. But tonight, you rest. Tonight, you heal. Tonight, you remember what it means to be truly at peace. The darkness embraces you gently, and you drift away on waves of the most profound rest you have ever known. This is your sanctuary, your reward, your salvation. In the quiet chamber, in the warm bed, in the gentle embrace of sleep, you find everything you need. And in the finding, you discover that sometimes the greatest adventures are the ones that end with the simple pleasure of lying down to rest. The bed cradles you safely, the blankets keep you warm, and the night watches over you like a guardian angel. Sleep comes like a benediction, and you surrender to its embrace completely. This is your peace, your reward, your home. And in the gentle darkness, you find the rest that makes all the suffering worthwhile. The night deepens, and still you sleep, dreaming of nothing but the profound comfort of being exactly where you are, safe, warm, at rest, at peace. And so ends another tale from the forgotten corners of history, where the greatest adventures often consist of simply enduring what must be endured. Rest well, traveler. Rest deep. And may your own dreams be filled with the simple pleasure of a warm bed and a peaceful night. Sleep now.